is going on, everybody? Welcome in to the North End Podcast, episode 112. My name is Zach Graham, your host here in the North End, joined, as always, by my good buddy. He's on record as my best friend. His name is Ian Michaud, and we call him
E.
Things really picking up in terms of the MLS news. We have a few pieces of Austin FC news to discuss as well. Happy New Year, my friend. And congratulations to me on me fantasy football champion in the league that each you and I cared about most. We did split. So obviously you're listening to episode 112. The North End Podcast maintains. How you feeling, my friend?
Well, I was feeling a lot better until you brought that up and reminded me that I put up my lowest point total of the season in the most important game and got absolutely thrashed. Lost my first ever 53 championship game versus you, breaking my undefeated record. And now I don't think we should do the rest of this episode, to be honest. No, I'm well, man. Struggling at work. But this takes priority here, so we got to get and excited about our day tomorrow as well, going down in San Antonio, see Wemby versus Giannis, hopefully Dame, a couple of those boys, that'd be sweet. But pressing matters with our favorite club here, Austin FC, that we must dive into, get the information out to the good old D-Gens.
Yeah, of course. And we can go ahead and jump right into that here, just because the news will be fast and furious probably next week. If it's not this time next week, we're going to be really scratching our heads. And I guess we can kind of talk about that timeline here as we go through this and when we should expect some more green smoke, because it literally has to come according to the rules. Not the smoke, but the signings. So let's talk about some of the news that has happened, the rumor mill as well, since we last convened a week ago. First, let's get to this. We have been wanting this for a long time, for months now. And the Johan Romaña no longer in limbo here. Of course, his loan to Olympia expired on New Year's Eve. And then just yesterday, Romaña himself confirms to, I think, a South Argentinian radio show here, TYC Sports and D Sports Radio. He confirms that he will be going on loan for the 2024 season to San Lorenzo in Argentina. So last we had discussed this. It was maybe it's San Lorenzo. Olympia wants him back too. Maybe it's there. He said on the radio, "I'm currently in Colombia. The signature is missing, but thank God everything is on track. I want to arrive and be at the disposal of the coaching staff." And he says he's already talked to the San Lorenzo coach. So I wonder if they've talked to the Austin FC coaches maybe and been like, hey, you want to make sure this guy's, eating the right things, doing the right things. I don't know. I saw some Olympia fans responding to this news on Twitter and saying basically what we said, like, good riddance. He takes too long to get in shape. He's injured. He has some flashes, but you ultimately can't count on him. And so I know this news was welcomed by you when I texted it to you.
Yeah, for sure. And we've been looking for it, been asking for it. But I mean, it's a new year. Maybe it's a new Johan, and this could be a really great thing for him if he decides to make the most of it. And like you said, he's shown flashes and teams continue to show some interest in him. And we got something back with this loan here, and he's off the he's not off the books entirely, right? But he's off the cap space this season.
So I believe when we loan guys out that would come off the cap sheet. I'm not sure about who pays what portion of the salary, but to my understanding, if he's not on the roster and he's playing for another team, that he's not counting against our cap. That may be wrong, but I would assume, man, like you talked about it, you were calling for us to use the buyout on him, right?
Yeah.
And if that were the case where all 400,000+ is hitting our cap, I would certainly be in favor of that as well. I would think they would have done something to ease that cap hit if that's not the case.
I mean, this seems like the most advantageous thing that we could have done because I don't think we're going to be able to sell him to anybody.
Right.
And again, if he can show up in shape and and revitalize, his reputation, that's great, man. Like, this is a good opportunity for him. Again, we've pointed out plenty of times that we don't have minutes for him here. We have plenty of money tied up on that back line. So I do wish him well, and I'm glad that this decision finally came through.
Yeah, and there's expected to be a purchase option at the end of the loan, which I found somewhat interesting considering, like, wouldn't he be out of contract? Because that means it's a 5-year fucking contract, like, with no options. Because we're not, unless he takes a leap. And again, like, wherever he went this year or going forward, we wish him well. We've said it one too many times now. It's just the fit is not here.
Yeah, I mean, look, and you gave me that information the other day that I had forgotten about or wasn't even privy to potentially with, us having Kamal Miller. And
for 15 minutes or so.
now we're here. So I could see Romaña having a fucking 5-year deal, just given how shitty Claudio handled all of these contracts with these guys, with Redis and Romaña and Gite and all these dudes. So, I hope that's not the case. And if there is a purchase option at the end there, then please show up and shake Johan. And
and speaking of Kamal Miller, one of those names we'll talk about a little later on. He's on the move once again. And somebody that, I know you and I hope is not on the move, but if he is, we hope it's for the right price. We've got some Danny Pereira news, and it's not a loan. It's not a transfer, not a trade, but his special talent work visa, which I believe is the EB1 visa, has been approved. So, number one, our boy can now represent his home country of Venezuela around the world, right? And not just in their fixtures that they play here in the States. So a big congrats to Danny. A big congrats, man, honestly, to the Venezuelan national team, because they are now getting a player at their disposal that is going to raise their level. And we know they've got, World Cup qualifiers and some other big games coming up this calendar year. And then for Austin, this not only would help the roster if he remains in Austin going forward, but I think it also raises his value inside the league. This visa, the EB1, grants Danny a green card, which means no longer taking up an international roster spot. So that, again, like, all good things from this news. And that news came from Football Critic, We Are Austin TV. So shout out to Alex there, who seems like very quickly has become the number one Danny correspondent globally.
That's great for Danny. That's great for us. That's great for Venezuela. I can't wait to see him again back for the Verde and Black and, doing his thing for his country as well.
Yeah. So, we should get confirmation of his stat. If he shows up at camp, you would think that means he's coming back. So,
I mean, at this point with the timeline and how this has played out, I'd be shocked because, like, we saw the peak interest levels. It was like there's 5 clubs, 6 clubs interested. And now that has waned a little bit. So I'm not sure if there's anything that looks to me like, concrete evidence that we're going to lose this kid. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah. Well, and of course, cue the Danny news tomorrow dropping. Technically, we talked about all those teams that were on the list that seem like, half the league, and as they should, if Danny's available, like you said, I think last week, like, every GM should call. You're not doing your job if you don't. And this technically the visa, right, opens up. Now Vancouver and Toronto could call because he could play up there. So then we got this news, little bit of crossover from last business day to the first team. Per Alonso El Inca, who is a reporter, looks like he's based out of Orlando, Florida, but also does some work with DirecTV Peru. And that would be the way he got this news. Sebastian Pineau expected to join the first team for training camp. So I don't personally think this is like huge news at all. I think it's good for the player, but we're going to see some of these FC2 guys in camp with the first team, as we saw last year with all the draft picks. Like we saw Jackson Valti, we saw Sal Mazzaferro, we saw Val Noel with the first team throughout camp last year. If you're asking me to list the top 3 or 4 guys from FC2 who should be invited to camp with the first team, Pineau is certainly on the list. So I think it's good news and a good opportunity for Sebas to kind of make his mark on the first team coaches and make his case for a potential first team deal down the road.
I mean, it's a great opportunity for the kid, to get into the training camp and be working with these professionals and, getting experience with higher caliber players is fantastic. I don't necessarily know if it translates to a spot with the first team, but he came on so strong last year and continued to provide goal scoring excellence for that FC2 club throughout our push into the playoffs and then into the playoffs as well. He was wonderful. So I'm very excited for that. Good experience and just good continuity for the club. I think so as well.
Yeah, so we'll see who else ends up at camp. Once camp begins, we'll start to get the content from the media team and stuff, and the crumbs are gonna start trickling out there. So we gotta get loose here. Stretch it out a little bit because maybe just the thumbs, right? The fingers.
Crumb day.
Yeah, we got some work to do coming up. We spent the majority of last episode talking about the signing of Stephen Cleveland and what that meant for the depth chart at goalkeeper. Just this morning, we've got a rumor that Damian Loss will be loaned out to an unnamed USL side. And this was first reported by a guy named Davide Masi, who at first glance, man, on his Twitter account, 250 followers, based out of Italy. My first reaction was like, huh?
Yeah.
Like, what? And then you do a little bit more research. You've got friends that know more about the world of soccer than you and I do. And Massi works for Gianluca Di Marzio, who is an Italian kind of international football transfers expert, is how he describes himself on his bio, working for Sky Sports there in Milan. 1.8 million followers for Di Marzio. He's like I think that's like a top 5 type of transfer guy. So immediately, once some of our friends pointed that out to me, I was like, oh, okay, well then there's some legitness to this. So Damian Loss, I guess thinking about that, we talked about last week, right? That our ideal situation from a talent standpoint coming into this year is Bersano moved on somewhere else, Stuver and Cleveland and Loss still on the roster, loaning Loss out and having Cleveland and Stuver battle for the one spot. So it looks like we might get that wish. We don't have any movement on Matt Bersano yet. So what are your initial thoughts? I guess just keeping it in the goalposts of him going to a USL club. What are your thoughts there?
I mean, I think it's great. He clearly needs to step up in competition from the next pro level. You look at Cleveland and, his career path, drafted, shipped out to some USL clubs, got the experience, came back to an MLS team, a more polished prospect. And now he's going to be potentially competing for a backup and or starting position with Stuver or however that plays out. So I think it's very advantageous to be able to call Damian back in a time of need is great. To still have him with our club and in our organization is fantastic. And the main thing that I care about right now is his development, right? Like Damian's development. Like how is he going to continue to get better? Because we saw what he can do. Yeah. And the translation between next pro and then into the MLS is not a linear path. It seems like there's a lot of different stops you might have to make unless you're really blowing things out of the water. But then in that case, you're probably not in next pro. So right. I understand where we need Damian to continue to get reps, continue to get time. And I think that this is a jump up, obviously competition wise, which is great for him. Opens up, some more flexibility with this roster. And still, we're anticipating, hoping Bersano is potentially on the move. And not to say that we don't want Bersano. It's just that the roster construction and looking at it from an efficiency and talent standpoint, that we want Stuve, Cleveland, Loss in the mix. He's loaned out now, still getting those important reps, still getting those game time situations. So I'm all for it. Another, savvy kind of move in my book. It's not something that's super sexy, super glamorous, all these signings that we've been looking for, but still foundational work, making sure that this roster is flexible and being able to bring in the guys that we're looking for later on.
So we'll see if that comes to pass, right? Which team it may end up being. Like, I think you mentioned there, like being able to recall him. I would hope that is part of the loan where we could, in a pinch, one of those top who we perceive to be the top 2 goalkeepers on the roster, one of them goes down, we need that backup to be able to bring Damian back just to back guys up for a couple weeks. That would be great. I think like for me, maybe it's just the easiest answer, but I think there's good rationale here. I would love to see him loaned to San Antonio FC.
That's crazy. I was just gonna be like, man, I hope it's San Antonio so we can go.
Yeah, see him. Well, like, yeah. Number one, we can go see him, right? Number two, we know that is a quality franchise. They have been since, and we've only been paying attention to USL for 3 years as well. But like, they're consistently at the top. I know they've had a little bit of turnover at the goalkeeper position, and I want him with one of the top tier USL clubs, right? Playing with some of the best teams with the best resources there, and in USL is a significant step, maybe two, up from the next pro level. So he would be getting that improvement in competition, hopefully be getting consistent starts, game week in, week out. And then again, if you need him in a pinch, you get him up to Q2 in 90 minutes flat. So that would be, I think, my ideal landing spot for everybody involved, fans included.
Yeah, that is 100% my ideal landing spot. We're going to have to talk to Harry, see if he can make this happen.
Right.
Take care of our boy. I mean, I wonder how much because like I said, one of the most important things for me there was that his development is critical, his ability to be in an organization that's successful. So I don't know how much that is being weighed in to a potential loan because, obviously we're not super familiar with everything that happens in the USL, the history of all these clubs or whatever. But, you send somebody to a shitty organization, it's a good way to pick up bad habits. It's a good way to learn, poor, I guess, habits again. Yeah. But I hope it's San Antonio just from the standpoint that we can go and him and be sick.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know how I feel about this.
Man, it's awesome. $5 beers.
True. Can you imagine though, because look, I've been calling since we lost that Open Cup game down there in San Antonio. I've been wanting the rematch, but can you imagine if he goes there and then knocks us out of the Open Cup? We get to the penalty kick shootout and he's saving fucking Giassi's shot and Seba's shot in the penalty shootout and at Q2 no less. Yeah, like that would just be a nightmare.
Be hilarious. Greatest keeper in the world.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. It does feel like this is going in the direction that we wanted it to go. Still having him a part of our club, under our control, but getting minutes at a higher level of competition while still being able to utilize the two very good starting level keepers we have, you would think, above him on the depth chart. And no updates again on Matt Bersano after the Mike Corniola found the We're Dallas Girls Now dog post on Instagram. So we'll keep our eyes on that. And man, like we kind of talked about last week, how there are a lot of fans online seemingly getting antsy about the lack of signings. And I don't know if I would say I'm antsy, but I'm still just like the anticipation has built to like just a level where I'm just like brimming with excitement to see what the next move is. We did find out that preseason is pushed back by a week for MLS this year. Last year, Austin reported the first Friday. First practice was the first Saturday of the calendar year. This season, it's going to be first practice is Saturday the 13th, meaning the players will report for physicals and all that type of stuff Friday the 12th. So we've got a little bit more time than we thought. You and I were approaching until yesterday, thinking guys are reporting Friday. We're going to have X number of signings before then. You have to, right? Yeah. So we got a little bit more time there. And we wanted to discuss this last week and left it out. Going back through the signings we've had in each of our first 3 years, right? 2021 is an outlier because we were building the roster from nothing. So I'm going to say these after January 3rd for each year. Back in that first year, we had 10 signings come in between January 3rd and the first match. And then there was an additional 3 that happened on New Year's Day of that season, which was Hector, Julio, and Johan Romaña. Then 2022, we get 5 signings after January 3rd, which was Kip Keller. Obviously, we drafted him prior to that. Johan Valencia, Ruben Gabrielson, Damian Las, and Felipe. So, I mean, those were all, to varying extents, very important pieces that we added. And, but before that, we had signed Maxey in late December. Then this past year, just 4, we had less roster turnover last year, right? But 4 guys between January 3rd and the beginning of the season was Matt Bersano, Adam Lundqvist, Leo Väisänen, and Will Bruin. So we certainly have more spots to fill now at this point than we did last year on the same day. And we know, I guess we could just pull up here the list of roster spots. And I'll get the little zoom going here as well.
I mean, like you said, there's some names in there from those later signings, and obviously we're up against the clock now where we're going to have to fill this out. So it's not like we're just going to be picking through garbage and, trying to grab some dudes who, nobody else really wants. We've been told the timeline, and this is a window, and you got to assume something is coming. Fast and furious here. And I'm excited for it as well. I understand people feeling a little antsy. We're getting close to that date. We're obviously not a full roster yet. So I understand, the trepidation that some people are feeling with all of that. But again, we're not there yet. We still have time, and there's you're guaranteed smoke. There's guaranteed smoke coming.
You have to.
Yes. There's no other option.
So, and technically, if we're just going by the rules, technically you don't need smoke until the day before, whatever the roster compliance date. I think it's the day before our season begins.
Oh, wow.
It might be that week. But so technically we could go into camp with this roster. I just don't think that's going to, we're going to add a couple pieces before next Friday. But looking at this on the screen, right, we take Romaña off the senior roster, assuming he's going on loan. We'll go ahead and take Gite off. We know he's still on loan until the summer at the very least, which leaves us again with 15 guys on the senior roster, 3 of those being keepers, and 4 guys on the supplemental roster. And, if Damien's going on loan, that takes a guy off the supplemental. We're, in all likelihood, not going to replace his spot on the supplemental roster, right? But you have to get to 18 on the senior roster by season start. So there's at least 3 signings coming. And if there's any more movement, like Bersano being sold, loaned, traded, what have you, that adds another guy we have to bring in. And it could be as many as 5, 6 if Bersano moves out. And that's just senior spots, right? Supplemental, we've got 6 supplemental spots open. And we're not expecting, we didn't have a first round pick. We're not expecting Farkaloon to sign with the first team. Right. So, I guess here we can have some fun with this as just warming you up for our preseason over under contest. Right. Oh. We've got 19 guys under contract here. I will set the line at 23 and a half players on the first team roster showing up to camp next Friday. You take the over or the under on 23 and a half. Over would mean we signed 5 guys, right? Between now and then. So what say you?
I say under.
Okay.
And partially because I feel like, again, that there is a number and a figure and a player that we are specifically targeting and looking at to acquire. And I don't know, how much flexibility and wiggle room you can have without, having that set in place.
Are you thinking that, sorry to interrupt, are you thinking that is coming before the season starts? Or do you think that is more because again, we've talked about for months, and we're certainly not the only ones, that summer makes more sense to bring in the massive signing, for lack of a better term there. But do you think we're maybe going to get somebody significant that's not just an MLS name? Because I think that certainly the safer bet is just we're getting kind of minutes filler type guys at this point.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not too sure. I don't know if I feel super confident either way, because I think there's writing on the wall for both arguments there. You want to maintain some sort of flexibility going into that summer window, given what we've been told from Roto and from the front office. Yeah. Now, we had a great conversation with Landon at the Austin Independent Media game, and we all were kind of on the same page where it's like, I don't think this team needs a super giant signing to be a competitive club. We need a couple more quality players, somebody who's going to be an impact guy, we got hot air. I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah.
But you look at last season and the disaster that it was and how many things just went wrong and how many things were in play, the Claudio nonsense, all of that surrounding. I mean, that was national news. Like that was a national fucking scandal that was going on that this team was dealing with. Them being devoid of a sporting director, having Josh trying to fucking sign guys and patch up this roster that was devoid of a lot of talent and then compounded with all kinds of injuries. So I don't know if we need to go get a giant name right here in this window to be like a really competitive club in this league. We got to stay healthy. We still need some more talent, but I think the long-term flexibility getting to that summer window, because, it might have been to temper expectation the way that Roto was framing that. But again, we don't think that he's been pulling any punches with what he's been saying in these press conferences, that he's been very honest and forthright and that, we're going to be having to need 3 windows to revitalize and revamp this roster to where we want to be. And then he outlines the entire program going forward from top to bottom, getting the academy, streamlined, all of that kind of, things that you need to have a club that has sustained success in this league. So I think that we're going to see some guys who are quality role players filling this roster out here before we get to that deadline, and then having that flexibility to go in the summer and grab somebody who is like, that's what we're talking about, baby.
Yeah, maybe 2 guys in the summer too, right? Depending on how all this shakes out. And again, I think I would be I think this is a I'm not going much past that 24 number, but I'll be a little optimistic here. I'll say slide over 23 and a half. And I think it's going to be more signings around the fringes, right? Probably 2-3 supplemental type options here. And maybe a senior roster guy or 2 here in the next 9 days until camp starts. So yeah, man. And again, they're going to come into camp with more than 19 bodies, because you can have guys on trial. You can have the FC2. You can have Cheikh Touré. You can have Sebas Pineau. You can have some of those other guys. Val Noel is probably going to be with the first team in training camp, right? So I think, and Val Noel, I think, is a very easy guy to get onto this supplemental roster. So just to fill out those spots. And I don't feel bad having Val Noel on the bench and having him come in to clean up games, or, if you're up 2 or 3, or hopefully not, but down 2 or 3, have him come in there and eat up some minutes. I think he's the guy that, if we're looking for one person off the FC2 roster to fill a supplemental spot, Val would be my pick. Not that that's any sort of hot take or anything. Micah's probably in camp with the guys, right?
I hope so. I definitely hope Micah is in camp with the guys. He needs to be there. He needs to be a part of that. And again, like I said earlier, the continuity of this club, getting those dudes in, working with them and everything, I'm all for that. And that gives you that kind of flexibility and leeway to not be at that, or what was your line, 23 and a half, so like that 24 roster spot, and still be able to run a very successful training camp.
Yeah, and while we're at it, I went back and looked because I was thinking, man, we've got a guy here that is recovering from an ACL injury in John Kolmanič, right?
Damn, you're reading my mind today.
What's that?
You're reading my mind today with the San Antonio thing, and then Johnny there was Johnny was the first name that I really looked at and was like, what's going on with him? What's up with him right now? Well,
ACL surgery was announced April 13th of last year, so we're right around 8 months right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think he is probably almost a full go, if not a full go, next Saturday, and I think he's active for the opener. That would be just a little over 9 months past surgery. And 9 months has kind of been at least like basketball and American football, that's kind of been the timeline over the last couple of years for ACL injuries. So I would think, when you think back to Ben Sweat in 2021, he was playing the very next year, albeit not at a very high level, but he was out there. And Kolmanič younger. So
ACLs don't take the same time they used to. That's for sure. So I hope rehab has gone really well. And it's the hardest thing about recovering from an injury like that, as somebody who's been laid up with surgeries that take a while to recover from, is, one, the rust, and the mental aspect of it. This has been his life the whole time. He's a professional fucking soccer player. It gets taken away from you. So to get back mentally, everything, he's going to need some time. But I do think that timeline makes sense where you're going to see him available.
Yeah. Well, I hope, fingers crossed, we've got a lot more concrete news, some additions to discuss this time next week. Just a couple more pieces of not really news, but the club naming their 2023 offensive and defensive player of the year. Offensive player of the year, no surprise, it was number 10, the captain, Sebastian Driussi. And then depending on who you ask, the defensive player of the year, also the captain, Alex Ring, getting the honors there from the team. And I think very well deserved because when he wasn't just injuring himself from exhaustion because we were playing him all over the field, he was killing it in the midfield there at the end of the year. And, I know both you and I are excited from a talent standpoint that he's still around. And we'll see how everything shakes out with the business side of Alex Ring and his status on this team. But congrats to both of those guys on the honors. And I think even in a down year, right, if you're going to have to award those things, which you do every year inside the team, those are the two guys that would have gotten my vote.
Cheers to that.
Yeah. And then just a little fun thing that, in our boredom waiting for actual Austin FC news to come across, the YouTube algorithm overlords, have provided a highlight video of what is an 8-year-old Owen Wolf. And it's about 10 minutes long. We tweeted it out, so you can go find that on our timeline if you're interested in and for some 8-year-old soccer players, he was dusting these kids. Yeah. And I think at the first part, you can hear Tyler Wolf after Owen scores a goal say, "That's my bro." And then I really think you can hear Josh at one point as well, a minute in. You see little Owen intercept a pass. And I think it's Josh. You hear him go, "Watch this." Owen leads the break, pulls up right outside the box and just loops a shot over the keeper into the net. And as he shoots it, you hear Josh go, "Boom." It's just oh man, that is a proud, confident papa right there. And man, watching the 8-year-old highlights, I can definitely see why when he signed as a 16-year-old, we were told that he was a 10, that was his best position. Watching him coming up in the clips in the youth soccer, man, he was just tearing those kids apart.
That's fun, man. I still have not got a chance to watch it. I thought I was getting fired yesterday. So I was dealing with quite a few different things, but that's great. Don't go on there. Don't go on that YouTube and say some weird things. But, if you don't leave that alone, man. He's just 8. No.
Well, let's just take a spin through all this MLS news. I know we did this last offseason and it was fun. It definitely helped me kind of keep an eye on the other teams. And then when the season starts, that's the guy we talked about in early January. So a lot of these names actually already familiar to you and I.
There's some names in there for sure.
Yeah. So let's just go through this. No real chronological order here. I'm just wrote down all the notes that happened over the last week. This happened today. Colorado Rapids making a big splash here. Georgi Mihailovic to the Rapids, coming back to MLS after his 1 year at AZ Alkmaar. Looks like a $3 million fee for the Rapids there. Obviously, Mihailovic rose to stardom with Wilfried Nancy and CF Montreal in the 2022 season. So Mihailovic is back now in the Western Conference, and he will be joined, this rumor comes true, Zach Steffen coming to the Rapids from Manchester City, finalizing a 3-year non-designated player deal. By your reaction there on your face, I don't think you didn't maybe know who Zach Steffen was?
Nope. But
yeah,
know the club.
Yeah, one of the top, at least a few years ago, one of the top U.S. National goalkeepers, obviously, Man City. And now in Colorado. So I would say that is a slight upgrade over one William Yarborough.
That is quite the upgrade. Two good moves for them. Obviously, they were absolutely pitiful last year. And some talent infusion.
Yeah, no question. We know they spent big on the Super Draft Day, right? Picked up 3 of the first 5 picks there. And then they did the Earthquakes acquired the rights to William Yarborough, who's out of contract, so he's a free agent. So we may see Yarborough then land with a new deal in San Jose. That may be a backup deal considering the young keeper that they do have there.
That's Ochoa, right?
I think that's their next pro kid. I think the first team kid's name is Daniel, the Brazilian.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah, because Ochoa he's American, right? He's either American or Mexican national.
I think he's Mexican.
But I know we were impressed with both Daniel and Ochoa. So I'd imagine Yarbrough, who I think is like mid to upper 30s in age. I think he's probably coming in there as a backup, but we'll see. Also happening today, Miles Robinson, who was probably the highest profile free agent in the league, goes to FC Cincinnati on a non-DP deal. Wasn't a DP before, but the rumor was he was looking for a Zimmerman-type designated player deal. So didn't get that, but Cincinnati adding him to that back line with Matt Miazga and Yosan Mascara, excuse me. Big move for Cincy.
Huge move. And I mean, the rich get richer there. What a club they have. Man, that's gonna be scary.
Yep. Jimmy Chara, one of our favorites. Goodbye to Jimmy. Transferred to Junior FC. I believe that's where he came from, or it's his boyhood club, one of the two, maybe both. But that deal opens up a DP spot for Portland. So they've got 2 spots open, and Flamengo apparently interested in Evander. The Timbers, quote, don't want to sell, but we'll see where the bids land. So, man, if Evander's out, then you've got 3 DP spots for the Timbers. And, I mean, the rebuild is on there.
Yes, absolutely. They're clearly looking for some, roster upheaval.
Yeah, well, and talk about upheaval. Timbers send $625,000 in GAM plus an additional $150,000 in potential incentives to Inter Miami for center back Kamal Miller. So ex-Austin FC Kamal Miller. I believe this is like his 6th team in the last 7 years, and I was shocked to see that he's just 26. That's probably why I think he's older, just because even in our short time watching this league and paying attention closely, like he has just been all over the place. So, I mean, I know that some fans of Montreal and Miami say that he's inconsistent, but man, when he's on, Kamal Miller is one of the best center backs in the league. So an upgrade for Portland, and again, jump starting that rebuild.
I mean, he is one of my favorite defensive players for sure. I don't get to watch him night in and night out, but he is as formidable as a defender as they come in this league. I'm a big fan. That's a huge get for them. Shitload of money. I don't know why anyone would do deals with fucking Miami though.
Yeah. Right.
Like I just like, I don't know, but I'm a Kamal Miller fan, and that's a big get for them for sure.
Atlanta looking like they're going to sign Norwegian international center back Stian Gregersen from Bordeaux, 28 years old, 8 caps for his Norwegian national team. So you would think that guy with that type of pedigree coming in to be their Miles Robinson replacement. So Atlanta United moving quite fast here in the offseason. And then let's jump back to the Western Conference because we've got action in Los Angeles. Hugo Lloris. You heard of that guy, right, E? Signs with LAFC, 1 year plus 2 team options. Lloris in the Western Conference. Can't wait. We've got Lloris and Berkey in this fucking conference, man.
It's fucking insane, dude. What's up with is Crepo out of contract? Is he still there?
He is out of contract. Yeah.
Out of contract. Okay.
And I think still in discussions, but like if I'm him, I'm not trying to be a backup.
No, you're not starting over Lloris anyway. So it's like,
well, I know like people who are more in tune with the European football say Lloris is washed, but like I think they would have said that about Berkey too, and Berkey was an MVP candidate last year.
I mean, Lloris was still fucking 6'7"? Like
he's
huge and he's long, and he's obviously has all kinds of caps at the highest level of soccer. So yeah, if he's washed for the EPL, that might be one thing. Doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be fucking MLS, man.
Yeah. Yep.
Those jobs, man.
But we've got some exits here. Diego Palacios signs with Corinthians in Brazil, or on some of our favorite TV shows. Braziel Diego Palacios landing with Corinthians. Look, if he wasn't coming to Austin, good, out of the league.
Yeah, see you later, man. He's a nightmare to deal with. That speed he has on that side, Jesus. He just puts so much pressure on you, man. And he's feisty. I like him.
Yep. And then LAFC, their kind of their entire attack there at LAFC, certainly wanted by teams around the globe. There's rumors that some of these Saudi Arabian teams are going to put huge bids in on Dani Bouanga. I think Bouanga was 7th in the world in terms of total goals scored in 2023. Just shows you, like, I know MLS level, right? And he's getting some of those goals in these external tournaments, right? But still, like, yeah,
it's absolutely nothing to scoff at. 7th in the world is ridiculous.
And then Mario Gonzalez, maybe some La Liga teams interested in him as well. Saw that today, and we know about Vela, right, out of contract, maybe leaving the team anyway. So, like, I would definitely take, like, I know they're going to reload immediately, but, like, all right, shuffle the deck, like, because I know what you got right now, LAFC, and we can't beat it. So shuffle the deck, and we'll try again next year.
Like you said, they're absolutely going to reload and retool. It does break up some chemistry, some continuity with the club. And, you know, obviously you got guys coming in who need to learn potentially a new system with LAFC, but they're going to be good. And it just kind of makes me be like, you know, the nightmare players that they're going to bring in and be like, you know, is the grass always green around the other side now that all these fuckers are gone?
Right. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see who they bring in. If those guys do indeed take off. The team across the town there, LA Galaxy, pick up John McCarthy off the scrap heap there. So obviously he was filling in for Crépeau last year. Was the hero in the shootout in the 2022 MLS Cup final, getting in there for Crépeau after he broke his leg. So McCarthy kind of career backup, but did just fine for them last year, filling in there as the starter. In Orlando City, making a big splash, Nico Ladero, who I think many thought was just going to leave and go back to South America, signing a non-DP 2-year deal with Orlando City. So the 2 seed in the East, adding a guy like Ladero on a non-DP deal must be nice.
Must be nice. I mean, you know, as much as that sucks for our club, it's good for the league. It's good that Ladero's staying in the league here. Obviously, the Lloris signing is not great for us, but I think it is a good thing for the league. And I would love it if Dani Bouanga gets shipped out to Saudi Arabia for $700 trillion.
Yeah. Well, you know, just like as low as possible, because I don't want LAFC getting all that money, but you know, they're gonna.
Yeah.
So last note I had here, E, I thought this was really interesting and could maybe spark a discussion, maybe today, maybe in the future. But Pop Marboy, the 19-year-old center back, who was offered a Generation Adidas deal by the league and skipped the draft because he had interest abroad, signs with Phoenix Rising in USL. The report is Phoenix, the offer was it was the strongest offer he had. So I don't think that is good news for MLS. No,
that's strange. I had no idea that went on. Like, what?
Yeah.
Phoenix Rising?
Just it was like 3 or 4 days ago, something like that. Well, and hey, I mean, look, more power to Pop there. Go get your money, because like if you're on the GA deal, you're only getting so much. Like it's going to be less than 150K. These USL clubs can pay guys more than that when they want to shell out the money. So I just don't think that's a great sign for MLS. Again, like this is the problem with not raising the cap more than we've already planned to.
Yeah.
It just is. If you want to keep up with the way the game is growing in this country, USL, and look, I know there are a lot of people who are fans of that league. You know, they want to see more of an even playing field between the two leagues. But for me, just like I think there needs to be a hierarchy, and USL should not be able to poach the top draft pick. We already don't have hardly any talent in the draft that makes an impact on the league. So like we cannot have the USL taking the top talents that potentially could enter the draft, especially when we offer him the guaranteed Generation Adidas deal and he turns it down and is going to USL. If he's going abroad, I get it. But like, I don't know, man, this is a red flag for me in terms of the league and the reluctance to make sweeping changes.
It's a great point.
Anything else for you before we get out of here on episode 112?
Happy New Year, everyone. Hope you have a wonderful 2024. Looking forward to seeing all the friendly faces back in Q2. And we'll probably see you on Verde Hill if you're up there, dabbling in the crumb business.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have the oversized binoculars out there. You and I, white as hell, will be well covered, slathered in some sunscreen and probably hoodie tied up and all that. Yeah, I'm hoping. Hopefully, we get the rest of the preseason schedule. Hopefully, there are some Verde Hill matches in there. Maybe that River Plate friendly as well. That should be coming out right around the time you would think that training camp starts next week. So we'll be here next Wednesday breaking down everything that happens in the Austin FC universe. And we appreciate you tuning in to episode 112 of the North End podcast. If you've got 5 extra seconds to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, we would greatly appreciate it. Of course, mention the North End podcast to all of your Austin FC friends, especially with preseason coming up. This is where we thrive. And of course, if you're watching on the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, help us grow the pod in that fashion. You can hit the notification bell to know when a live stream pops up or a new episode goes live. And of course, on this episode, hit that thumbs up, like the video, help us battle the YouTube algorithm overlords, atone for your sins, wash yourselves clean in the waiting game of the North End. We will be back next Wednesday, breaking down everything in the Austin FC universe, getting ready for training camp next Saturday. 52 days until the opener. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. We'll see you back here next Wednesday. Until then, I'm Zach. Vamos Austin FC, everybody. Goodbye.